at grade level. And so we quickly wrote a piece on that. 84% graduate, but only 26% could read at grade level. That got national attention. It was in all the, you can imagine all the different sites that it was on. And so I was doing some radio, and one of the Decatur radio shows said, "Hey Ted, will you come on and tell us a little bit about this education report or the education data?" So we looked up, before I went down to Decatur, we looked up the data. And we go to the report card. This is the ISB report card, open to everybody, public data. And I see that the percentage of blacks in the third grade who can read at grade level was 2%. I said, well, that's obviously got to be wrong, right? I mean, more than 2% of kids can read it in third grade. So I looked over the math, I clicked over the math and said, okay, well, let's see what that is. It was 1%. And then I went to the fourth grade and the fifth grade. I kept going, every single grade, it was 2%, 5%, 6%. The entire school was like 9%. And I said, that can't be right. So John and I, we call the school district and say, look, before we report on this, we want to hear from you. We don't want to write reports that are wrong. This obviously is wrong. And they said, no, sadly it's correct. We still didn't buy it. So we drove down to Decatur. We met with them. We tried to find out why. And they basically said, well, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough of the right teachers, not the right race. They made all kinds of excuses. They said we don't have a curriculum. So every teacher was making up their own curriculum. This is Illinois. This is one of the highest spending states in the country when it comes to per student education. And the Decatur doesn't spend what my kids get at New Trier. I get that. But then again, we pay gym teachers 150 grand for I don't know what in New Trier. Doesn't make sense. So it's 2%. Well then, so we decided to write a report on this. And we put together, you guys probably can't see the little black, it's gonna be too small over here, but the chart on the left, we found out that just 7% of black kids in Rockford could read at grade level. In Decatur, just 16% of white kids, so it's not a race thing, just 16% of white kids could read at grade level. In Elgin, 11% of Hispanic kids could read at grade level. Oh, John's telling me that I should be clicking my clicker. That I actually have this data. Oh, look at that. Is that easier for everybody? Thank you, John. This is why John comes along. So there you go. Mount Vernon, 0% of the black kids can read. It's horrific. Peoria. Now, it's not just the third grade, but let me tell you why the third grade matters and why we focus on it. If you can't read in the third grade, you can't learn in the fourth, you can't learn in the fifth, you can't learn in the seventh. And we tracked these numbers in a lot of these schools, and they stay pathetic all the way through. And it really is sad. I'm getting a little, it's sad. And it's everywhere. Now, of course, some of these areas around here, they do better, but we'll talk a little bit about that once we get there. Now, here's what really ticked me off. So I said, my gosh, if the results are so bad, let's see how the teachers evaluate themselves. Or let's see how the teachers are evaluated. Let's look at how the school districts are evaluated. So John and I went to the data, and what the hell did we see? 100% of the teachers indicator were rated, and this is rated either by the administrators or professional evaluators. They were rated 100%. Like, was there not one bad teacher in Decatur? But it wasn't just Decatur, right? Peoria, 98%, Mount Vernon, 100. Chicago was the bad one, right? 91%. And this is on the ISB website. This is what parents are being told. And you can imagine some parents aren't keeping up with what's going on. Some, maybe lots. But this is the kind of data that's in the system. And this is how they evaluate themselves and perpetuate the system. Now, it gets worse than that, right? Let's see how the superintendents are doing. The same people that are running these shows. Decatur, superintendent salary, $200,000. Eventually that means, I'll show you the next numbers, but you can see that there are 850 school superintendents in Illinois. Some of them making $400,000. So if that's not enough to tick you off, let's look at the pensions. Right, so if you look at the lifetime pension benefits of the top earners in those districts, the top, well, it's only 5.1 million. These are lifetime pension benefits. So if you take the current highest pensioner in those districts and you calculate their expected lifetime total pension payouts, 5 million for Decatur, 6 million for Quincy, a low 4.7 million in Waukegan. Now, so I said all this, and now I'm looking back up about wire points. I don't know how many of you guys know. Who knows wire points here? Okay, so it's a pretty good crew. For those of you who don't know us, quick thing, we're fact-driven, data-driven. We like to tell the truth. We like to speak direct. We don't like to beat around the bush, and but we don't call people names. We don't do name calling. We don't like that. We argue that we need to win arguments with logic, reason, persuasion, okay, and data and facts. We don't do a whole lot of storytelling because stories are anecdotes. The data tells a real story. Somebody said I should write a story. I should do a story on a Decatur kid. And I said I don't want to do a story on a Decatur kid because there's 8,000 kids in the Decatur schools. My story is about how the 8,000 are being failed, not one. I get the ideas of emotional stories, I get all that, but the real truth is behind the 8,000 kids who are trapped in a Decatur school. That's the real story. And then just a quick thing on myself and why I do this. My parents were immigrants to Illinois. Many of you have heard this. My dad escaped from Poland in 1952. Where did he come to find freedom? Chicago and Illinois. My mother was a 19-year-old Ecuadorian. Where did she come to find freedom, opportunity? Chicago and Illinois. They met Chicago. Interesting life I had with a Polish guy, an Ecuadorian mom, but they gritted it out. They made it in Chicago. And when they came, everybody was coming from all over the world to live in Illinois, from everywhere. Today, we're the biggest losers of people, competing with New York State for the biggest losers of people in other states. It's a sad, sad reversal, but one I believe that can be turned around. The big question is how and when, and how long do we have to wait, and what do we have to do? But I do believe that this state with its great assets and a bunch of warriors can take it back one day. It might take a few years. So enough on that. So my problem with this educational system, it's not about, you'll hear, there's not enough money, it's a race issue, it's critical race theory, it's we don't do enough sex ed in kindergarten, it's not fair, those things. It's become a system that's built, it's a jobs program for adults and a daycare system for a lot of kids. Now, I'm being very broad, very gross. It's one of the things I haven't liked to say, but it's kind of true. And I'll tell you, you saw the data. Decatur didn't just become bad last year. Neither did Rockford. All those school districts have been running like this for a while. And when they allow themselves to get 100% rating, and if you go to, sorry, I missed one point. If you go to the ISB report card, and you look at some of these failed Decatur schools, ISB says that they are commendable schools. That's their second best rating for schools. It's a fraud. It's a fraud. So, how much in Illinois do we spend on education? Do we need more money? No. We are the eighth, one, two, three, four, five, six, I think it's the eighth highest in the country. When you adjust for cost of living, when you add up state, local, and federal dollars, we are the eighth highest in the country. You don't need more money. Okay? Now, by comparison, I want to show you two other states. Indiana spends $11,700. That's, whatever that is, almost like 50% less. Florida spends less than $10,000 a student. Okay? They must really do bad in the results, right? Not quite. Here, these are the NAEP scores, the National Education Assessment, National Association of Education Placement Test, whatever the heck it's called. There it is, right there. National Assessment of Educational Progress. From the last 12 years, Indiana and Florida in fourth grade testing have done better than Illinois, despite the fact that they spend far, far less. So if you wonder why your property taxes are so high, this is one of the reasons. And Florida, by the way, kept the schools open almost the entire time during COVID. We were shut down. Let's get local. This is a really interesting chart. John and I just did this the other day for the first time. So we wanted to see who does best in Illinois on reading proficiency. Now this is again from the state report card, so everybody has access to the same stuff. We're not inventing this stuff. We don't run these numbers. But it's interesting. There's a school in Bartelso. Does anybody know where that is? I looked. I actually called the superintendent the other day, left him a message to congratulate him. I wanted to know how he, and I didn't call Addison, how he has the second highest reading proficiency in the state, and he only spends $7,300. What the heck is that? So there's 860 school districts. Bartelso was ranked number 2. Now then you get into the richer districts, Bannockburn and Lake Forest, New Trier. They're spending 20-something thousand. Okay, they've got 80% of their kids reading at grade level. That's pretty good. What happens when we get to the local schools? Well, St. Charles ranks 73rd, St. Charles district, spends $14,500. 62% of kids can read at grade level. That means that 38% cannot. And that's a question that I think you guys can have for your school district. Geneva, 194th. Just 51% can read at grade level. And something's really screwed up here. When I hear 2% for Decatur, I start to say, oh, okay, Geneva's doing pretty well, right? That's what happens when you bring down expectations. When you have equity down at the low levels. Batavia, 302nd, 45% reading proficiency. Oh, and Elgin. Who here's from Elgin? No, nobody. All right. Well, just 27% of those kids can read at grade level. And I know there's a lot of energy spent in U46. Now let's just see real quick, just while we have this data, let's look at COVID. What did we do? So St. Charles, the reading proficiency was 62.2% in 2019. It fell by 11 points. It dropped 17%. Geneva took a 10% hit, 10 percentage point hit. It was down 21% overall. Batavia held pretty well. It has lower results, but it held pretty well. And of course, Elgin was the big problem. It went from 27% down to 20%. So we can thank our governor and many of our boards for closing down our schools here. This is not a painless policy that we had in Illinois, and there's much more than just the outcomes, right? Just quick facts on some of the worst schools. So the worst school in Geneva, Harrison Street, just 34% of its kids can read at grade level. It fell to 27.2. Anderson. Batavia, this school, J.B. Nelson took a pretty good hit, 18% down in performance. And the last one, this is the kind of stuff we see here. Ronald Neal School, I don't know anything about it. Just 4% of its kids could read at grade level in 2019. And it fell to 2.2% in 2021. Who's doing something about this? That's the question. It doesn't matter. Everything's fine. Teachers are doing well. And this is my problem. It's the system. I don't want to beat up on teachers necessarily. They're in a system that doesn't work. It's a system that doesn't care. And so, let's move forward. So these are the top pensioners in your region. So I don't know if this is a Mr. or Mrs. Barshinger. Current pension $275,000 a year. expected lifetime pension, 7.4 million. This is what our taxes are going for. I don't mind district superintendents making good money, but the taxpayers have to pay for that. You know, don't make that kind of money. Edwards is 6.8 million for Elgin. What it is we've got a bunch of superintendents who are making anywhere from $4 million to $10 million is the biggest one in the state. I forget which one is the 10 million. It might be one of the New Trier superintendents. So this is part of the system. Everybody's paid well. They take care of each other. What they do is they move kids from one grade to the next because that's the easiest thing for them to do. There is no rule like in Florida. Florida has a third grade rule. If the kids can't read in third grade, they don't go to fourth until they can read. Why? Yeah. Why don't we have that? Now there's good news. Waukegan legislator, I'm drawing a blank on her name. She's put out that law. Hasn't gotten anywhere. But this is the whole thing I have. Is like in a place like Decatur or a place like Rockford, people should get together, parents, school, city officials, government officials, and say we're not letting our kids go to fourth grade until they can read. And that would be the real thing. Now it's a little harder up in this level where results are much better, but it's really the same thing. Why are we demanding more? Why are we happy with 50%, 60% reading levels? There's a lot more that can be done. So this kind of ties it all together. This is what we call the educational industrial complex. We've got this weave of labor laws, some of the most powerful union-friendly labor laws in the country. I'll come to that in a second. Put that together with these benefits that we talked about, these pensions, and that the health care is really friendly, and the sick days, you can accumulate them. You can accumulate 2 years worth of unused sick leave and turn it in for 2 years of work, and you get a pension on that. I've never heard anything like that. How many people in the private sector get that?
Oh, I wish.
You got these complex bureaucracies. We'll talk about that. There's so many districts and so many bureaucrats, and they get lots of money. Oops. You got powerful administrators. I do find that the superintendents are some of the smartest guys in the state. And I don't necessarily mean that in a positive sense. They are really smart, but they're very smart at moving the system. They're very clever, and they're very good at it. So they're really a contentious group of administrators. And the unions I mentioned are so powerful. So what do they get? And this is a little bit of Amendment 1 without needing to talk about Amendment 1. How many people in this room, if you're in government, you'll have one, but how many people here have a multi-year contract? Raise your hands, please. Okay, there's one, two, a couple, right? But most people don't have a multi-year contract. How many people have guaranteed raises for the next 3 or 4 years? Okay, a couple. But most people don't. How many people have guaranteed lifetime pensions? A few. Most people don't. Right? Most people don't. They're guaranteed if it ever gets paid. Salary spiking. Who gets their salary spiked automatically in their contracts? Right? So I'm pointing out all this is because the unions have these pension pickups, they have subsidized health insurance, they have all these benefits, and they're locked in, and many of them are guaranteed. But most people here don't have that, yet they're forced to pay for it. And again, that's why property taxes are so high. Now, one of the powers they have is they have the powers to negotiate everything in the dark. Illinois is just one of 10 states where the unions and the administration get to negotiate contracts without the taxpayers public, without the taxpayers knowing anything about it. I forget which district just recently signed their agreement with the teachers union, and I loved it because it was in the news. It said, the administration has just reached an agreement with the school district, and the details of the contract will be announced after it's signed. I'm like, yeah, right. So nobody finds out anything until after it's signed. That's crazy. We're one of just 13 states that make strikes legal. Our teachers can strike legally. None of our neighbors allow that. And again, that's one of the powers. And if you've seen, of course, you've seen the Chicago teachers use that power over and over again. I don't need to talk about results. I can just show you they struck, geez, I can't remember the number now.
5 times the last 10 years.
Well, 5 times the last 10 years, but if you go back to 1979 or whatever year it is, it's every 4 years they strike. We've got our clip in here. So. Well, let me tell you one thing, and I tell you all these facts because I argue that the more you understand the system and its powers, the better you can defend it when you talk with reason and logic to people that you're trying to persuade when you're knocking door to door. We'll make this file, we'll make this data available to you, but the stronger you are at calmly defending when somebody says, no, we need more money in education, you can come back and say, well, we already spent the 8th most. Or somebody might say, oh, I like Amendment 1, we need more union powers. Well, you might say, well, we already let our teachers strike, and most states don't do that. But the better you are equipped at being a defender of change and a critique of the status quo without being nasty about it, the better off we'll be. So you should know that in states like Tennessee, Texas, Georgia, the school districts are not allowed to negotiate with the teacher unions. It's illegal. It's actually illegal for them to negotiate. So collective bargaining is prohibited. In Illinois, it's the exact opposite. We're at the other extreme. It is compulsory. Our governments must negotiate. They're forced to. It's legal. They're required. It's compulsory. They must negotiate with the unions. Now, most people did. I didn't know that until a couple of years ago. I thought just collective bargaining isn't that normal? No. There's many states that don't allow it. I shouldn't say many states. There's some states that don't allow it. So at the extreme end, you go at the bottom there, our teachers can strike, and our police and fire unions, if they're not happy with their contract, they can't strike and make that illegal, but they can demand arbitration. And that's where an unelected official comes in, unelected by the people. He or she comes in and just kind of decides what the contract should look like. And again, the people get cut out of the situation. That's the kind of powers we've given our unions. And we have one of the most extreme labor laws in favor of the unions and their powers. So you should know that. And I know you know that probably, but now you know it more mathematically. So some of the results of those powers, we, for example, we have the highest teacher salaries in the entire Midwest. So it's not like, again, our teachers need more money. Now, maybe in certain pockets, some do need more money than others, but overall, we pay the highest salaries in the Midwest. So when they say we need more money, you have a quick retort right there. By the way, all the stuff we do is we get the stuff from this is national data. It's not, John didn't make it up, I didn't make it up. This is from the National Education Association. They rank it, we grab it. Another problem we have, you guys know this one pretty well. We have the most units of government in the country, and we have lots of school districts. Illinois, we have 852. It depends what you count. 852 school districts. That means lots of bureaucrats. And I've looked at New Trier. I'll talk about that in a minute where I am. In Florida, they have just 75 school districts. Now, they're on the other extreme, but they do it by county, one per county. They have 67 counties, and they have a few extra. So this cuts out a lot of the bureaucracy. Now, let me show you my example. And if I were living in Rockford or wherever, Decatur, I'd be really ticked off. So this is a New Trier township, and the red line is the New Trier high school boundary. And we have 6 feeder districts, they're independent districts. So you have a total of 7 districts in one coterminous area. Total number of students is 12,000. So, Elgin is how many? 40,000? Something? 40. Anyway, 12,000 students. This could easily be a unit district. But no. Instead, each one of these has their own superintendent, some assistant superintendents, they allocate bookkeepers, plant managers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. John and I FOIA for it, we got it. It was another close to 50 district employees across all of them, and they're all making really good money. And you know, on the one hand, it's okay because when they pay a lot of property taxes, so a lot of it is self-funded. But the pensions aren't. The pensions are paid by state tax dollars. That means the people in Decatur, the people in Rockford, the people who don't have these benefits, their income taxes are going to pay for the $10 million pension I just talked about. So it's a really messed up system. And it's a really regressive system, by the way, because everybody puts in money into the pot, and then the most money comes to Nutrier. Oh, Johnson's quick. Oh, so yeah, here's the Nutrier pensions, by the way. So, Henry Banks was a famous guy who's got a lot of attention. He's got a $350,000 pension. His COLA is, let's see. His COLA alone is $10,000 a year, his cost of living adjustment. Right? My mom gets like an $18,000 Social Security check every year. His COLA, just his cost of living, is $10,000. So you can see this is a problem. So you talked about the horror, was it a horror show? Is that what you mentioned? Yeah, so this is a horror show for me because we've lost control of our ability to manage our state, and our taxpayers really have no voice. There's no voice in this system. They have the power, they've got the money, they've got the taxation power. Right? The more school districts there are, the more they can tax, the more they can build buildings, the more that they can keep raising levies. So you should be a little ticked off, or as one of our associates at Wirepoint, he says, I'm really pissed off. He wrote a book about Chicago. He says, what is it called, John? Yeah, Notes of a Pissed Off Native Son. So there's a good reason to be pissed off about this. Now, if that wasn't all negative, the first action I'm going to tell you when you ask about what you should do, I want you to think about Amendment 1. Now, you guys have already met Miley Smith from Illinois Policy Institute, some of you who were here. So you may have gotten a pretty good earful on Amendment 1. I'm going to give you the education angle. And you should know that as a 501c3, as a not-for-profit, we can't take a position on Amendment 1. So you might hear me talk about both sides. Like I might say that if you really want really strong, powerful unions to have more power over taxpayers, then this is the amendment for you. If you think that they've got too much power already, then you'll want to vote no, right? So you get to decide on your own. But here's the part that scares me. Let me actually go over the language. You guys probably saw the language with Miley, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, let me show you again real quick, just in case. So we split the amendment language into 3 parts. This is the first part. In case you guys can't read in the back, employees shall have the fundamental right to organize and bargain collectively. The representatives of their own choosing for the purpose of negotiating wages, hours, and working conditions, and to protect, this is important, and to protect their economic welfare and safety at work. Now, this is amazing because nobody's made it, okay. What they're doing is creating a right in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, and they're adding this right to collectively organize with free speech, things like that. So that's amazing in and of itself. But not only that, they're saying, and we want to protect our economic welfare. Well, this is the Constitution. It supersedes every law that's in the books. So does anybody know what economic welfare might mean for a teachers union? Everything, right? Anything. We've already talked about how many powers they have. They would get more powers. And let me be fair. If you think they should have more powers, this is great. All right? And how do you define safety? Is safety, I want these kids to know about, I'm worried about kids and their safety, and I'm worried about the safety of the school, so maybe they should know sex ed earlier, right? We should have that in the contract. This is the big risk. I'll come back to that in a second. Now, this is what makes this law so this amendment so pernicious. Not only does it put that in the right, but it turns around and says, no law shall be passed that interferes with, negates, or diminishes the rights of employees to organize and bargain over blah, 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 blah. So now, imagine this. If you ever want to pass some kind of labor reform, maybe consolidate school, maybe you want to consolidate the nuclear school district so we can save a little money, the unions will point at this and say, hey, no law shall be passed that changes our rights on economic welfare. You know, if you start shutting down districts, that will affect somebody's economic welfare. But good luck trying to get that. So it's hard to imagine, if you're an opponent of this, it's hard to imagine how you would ever get property tax reductions ever again. And it's easy to imagine how taxes go up faster than they've ever gone up. That might be something you might think if you're an opponent to this. Well, I don't have the third part. So I've said a lot of things that I think are very negative, unsurprisingly, if I'm talking about education. I would be dishonest if I tried to give you a positive presentation. However, I'm becoming a little bit more positive on the change. I've been doing this stuff in Illinois for about, I don't know, 12 years. And it's been a slog because it's been hard to see people get excited. We finally had the progressive tax block 2 years ago, and I said, how did that happen? That was good. But what I really like that I'm seeing right now is I'm seeing a lot of pockets of people being really engaged, willing to speak up again. And you know, maybe Trump helped with that by speaking up and fighting back, I don't know. But I see people starting to engage. I don't know how optimistic I am about November, whether we'll get the changes that we want then. But what I do like is I think we've started moving the ball. And as long as we don't lose too many of our warriors to other states in the meantime, then I think there's real opportunities for change over the next few years. Because the pendulum is moving so far that it's becoming crazy, which brings me back to my last point on Amendment 1. I can see an opponent of Amendment 1 worrying this, that because of this amendment, a teachers union could negotiate maybe something on sex ed, maybe something on critical race theory, maybe something on the transgender issue that's become very, very hot. They could negotiate that in the contract. Remember, you guys are not in the room, you don't even know what's going on, so unless it leaks, nobody knows. They negotiate that in the contract, sign the contract, agree to it, and then they can point and say, no laws can diminish what we've done. Good luck ever fixing those things if you're opponent of that. If you like that, this is, again, like I keep saying, it's an amendment for you. Sorry that I keep repeating myself on that. But so I think this is the issue. So number one, make your decision on Amendment 1. Decide how you want to go. Advocate whichever way you want. But people should understand this. Nobody's talking about this. I've yet to really hear anybody running for office talk about this. I don't hear this at all. We've started to see the ads on TV, but that's one side. I have not seen the other side. So that's one thing you can do. Number two, I will ask this selfishly. I think our data is very helpful for you guys in persuading other people on education reform. I don't think we can only do it by being angry and yelling at it. And I'm not saying that's what you guys do. I'm just saying, so sign up for wire points if you think it's valuable. We've got a QR code, I think, on every table, so it's really easy to sign up. Try it out for a little while. We curate our news every day. We grab what we think is the best news out there. We do the dirty work for you. We take things that we know traditional media won't cover. We'll include that in ours. We'll have our original work. Try it out for a couple weeks. If it suits you, great. If not, you can always unsubscribe. But we argue that our data there, you share it, it can really help. That's number two. Number three, from an action perspective, there's more of us that need to get engaged and run. We've got to put our money where our mouth is. That's great, and I know a lot of people here are running, which is awesome. More people need to run for school boards. Where I am in my neck of the woods, nobody really wants to run for the school board. We need to have more people that step up. So, be braver, speak up, be bold. Use wire points wherever you can. If we can provide you data just reach out to us. I think my phone number is right there. I answer my phone, I answer for wire points. So if anybody wants something that helps them make an argument, win an argument, please reach out. And with that, I think I will stop and take any questions. So thank you very much for giving us the time here today.
Thank you, Ted. I would like to remind everyone, you also have Facebook as well.
Yes, of course, Facebook, Twitter,
Yes.
Instagram, we
So
started.
you can follow him other ways. There's multiple ways to follow Ted. So I encourage you to follow, to keep up with this. And we will get the slides and try and send it out through the newsletter so that you have that as well. Questions? Raise your hand if you'd like a question.
And challenges too. I like challenges because we have to defend our work.
So the comparison that you were making, is that at the third grade level or the high school level for the proficiency of those students?
Those are the overall. So ISB, State Board of Education, provides an overall level so we can compare school district across the school district or school versus school.
And your importance for the third grade is because of the school to prison pipeline?
You could say that, it depends on the school district, but the importance is really, if you can't read, and we've seen this, the kids can't read, how can they learn science in the 5th grade if they can't read, right? And every year it gets worse, and then, there's lots of research done. Can't read in 3rd grade, you're in trouble, period.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. The tragedy is there are too few people that know what you said, and that's the tragedy. I've been involved in a big way in education in Minneapolis, Chicago, and Kansas City. It's the time when the business community was organized. Business in Chicago took over the Chicago Public Schools. I appointed all 11 members of the school board, the best school board they ever had. The tragedy is the business community today is asleep at the switch in those 3 cities across America. The business community has really failed us. And that's a tragedy. I'm working, trying to do something, but it's a tragedy. But your presentation is excellent. People need to know about it. So thank you. It's excellent.
Thank you. If I can add one comment, not only, I would not say that the corporate, the business world is asleep. I think they're complicit. They're really complicit. I look at some of these not foundations, what do you call them, civic groups and all that. They will not take on Lori Lightfoot. They didn't take on Rahm Emanuel. They're too scared, so they sit back and they don't do anything. So it's complicit. So they need to be called out. We call them out as well, but sadly they're complicit.
The original mayor, and he asked us, what do you want? And the business community said, Mayor, we're taking over. And he rocked in his chair, he said, okay, we worked with him. And then we took it over and we changed things. That's not happening today, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Ted, thank you. Awesome information that we'll use in our group that's working on education. And then that other gentleman had a comment about why 3rd grade. I'm a reading specialist. From K to 3, you're learning to read, and then from 3rd grade on, you're reading to learn. So if you don't have it by 3rd grade, you're missing everything.
Just to be clear, so we can get all that information that you just presented on your website
For a small fee.
for a small fee?
Yes, yeah, we'll provide it to be shared.
Awesome, thank you.
No, I'm good. I'm done. Do you have my?
My wife taught in Wheaton for over 30 years.
Sandwich and
When you talk about administrators, they had a lot of them. They had a superintendent and 2 assistants. And 2 assistants did the work, and all of the superintendent himself did was go out and parade. He was the glory boy. And they had a habit of moving from one district to another for higher pay. They jumping districts. They don't. In the old days in Batavia, where I grew up, the principal, one of the principals became the superintendent until the day he retired, and they picked another one of the principals. It wasn't this type of gypsy arrangement that they have where they just keep moving around for a higher and higher salary. Jumping kids up a grade, whether they can read or not. I often wonder if the problem with that is that some of them are scared of the parents. Oh, my son won't make it with his classmates, so they raise hell and they just pass them on. Waste, school waste. Stewart Elementary School in Melbourne. A few years ago, when I was doing a lot of waste paper work and dumping it, they basically gave me permission for getting paid for it. I opened the dumpster 3 days after school. There were 2 perfectly good school desks in the dumpster and about 10 or 12 reams of unused 8.5 by 11 paper in there. They just threw it away. Why? You know, if you got the waste cured, you might have some of the cost cured. Boards who won't fight, school boards who won't fight, a lot of those people are just want a feather in their cap, want something on a resume. They don't care. We're fighting right out there right now to get some new board members in who will fight. And consolidated elections are coming. And consolidated elections include school board elections. They're never well attended as far as voters. But that's where your tax money is going, folks. So you better find some good people to run for these offices, because this is what your property taxes go for. And those petitions for that are going to be released in a couple of weeks for people to start filling them out for those jobs. So look for good candidates or go on it yourself.
Thank you.
I would just like to say, if anyone would like to run for school board, or if you know someone, you can come see myself or Sue, because we'd like to start getting a list for the area of anyone that's interested. There's quite a few. I'm almost positive there's 5 positions here in Geneva open. So 4 in St. Charles.
Can I add one point just before your question? What's a really important point was made. If we ever want to think about reforms, one of the huge reforms has to be to move our school board elections and consolidated elections to November, because they've rigged it such that, you know, these elections, only 10 to 14% of people vote. They organize it well. The unions come out and vote. The rest of us are either too busy or whatever it is, and so it's one of the things that has to be fixed.
Okay, great work here. Just a quick question. 11 Republicans in the Senate and 8 in the House voted for Amendment 1. We can't find their names anywhere. Can you help us out?
I can help you if you, hey John, the votes for Amendment 1, do we have on the QR code, can they get to Amendment 1?
The QR code, yes, we can take you straight to our amendment.
Which one? So on your table, there's something on Amendment 1, and I think the QR code will take you to our Amendment 1 page, and there you will find out which legislators voted for and against. So if you go to Amendment 1 on WirePoint's website, you'll find who voted for it. And yes, let me, to clarify, 11 of the 18 Republican senators voted for it in the Senate. Every Democrat voted for it in the Senate. And in the House, 9 Republicans voted for it, and all the Democrats voted for it. So it was a bipartisan vote, sadly.
It's not a question, just a statement. You're not telling me anything I don't already know. And it's been this bad for 30 years. I've got, my oldest 2 are now 39, 40. I'm sorry, my oldest 2 are now 39, 40. And the hell they went through in 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade was just unreal. We had to fight with the principal. And my daughter passed with music, gym, and art. She was failing everything else, but they passed her anyhow. And when the teacher said, your daughter's failing, she went into the next grade. Your daughter's failing 4th grade. Math, she can't. Well, what do you expect? You guys passed her. This was, we're talking 80s, 90s, long ago. What's my daughter do now? Homeschool. No more of union stuff.
Prefer.
And my son's rights were violated in first grade by the teacher. She refused to come to any of the staff meetings, special ed. She didn't want anything to do with him. She wanted him out of his class. And she fought us the entire way. She eventually got taken out of the teacher position, but they didn't dock her. She got a raise like she was supposed to, and she got taken out, making all the money, not teaching anymore. And she had her tenure. The whole union thing is a sham. And I'm not against organized labor, but they're not helping.
Well, thank you for that.
Sorry, it's just a statement.
No, you know, what's interesting, you mentioned that things haven't changed, and sadly, that's true, which is another argument, you know, who's responsible for that? I keep saying we're responsible, right? We let things happen to us that happen to us, so we need to organize and fight back. One other thing I want to add is that at Wire Points, if we're doing things right, we'll have a big school choice movement, education freedom movement coming up soon. So that's a key part of the solution to this problem is educational freedom.
I just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing. If you haven't checked out Wire Points, check it out on a daily basis. I look at it every day, get a lot of information. One of my questions is, if Amendment 1 goes through, will it be able to force the closure of homeschooling and or private schools?
You know, I can't envision that happening. So I would say no. That doesn't mean that somebody wouldn't try and that all kinds of stuff happens. And this is the problem with Amendment 1. You know, some will say it's an opportunity, but it's the problem with Amendment 1 is that we don't really know what would happen because basically Amendment 1 says all the laws that we have on the books, forget them. When it's regarding labor, forget them because the Constitution supersedes. And the only language that's in there is what you saw. And so I don't know what will happen. I don't think it will be what you said. I think there's no way to shut down private schools, but I do think that there'd be lots of attempts at all kinds of unionization all over the place, fights, legal fights. I mean, a lot of litigation everywhere. It won't be pretty.
Anyone else who's here, if you haven't covered Wire Points literally every day, it's my Reader's Digest and better still. But I will ask this question that we sometimes had around the room coming in. Will this give bargaining rights to inmates at state prisons?
You know, I have heard that. I can't remember if it's the Illinois policy. Somebody said it. I haven't studied that research, and so I can't even. I don't know. But that would be interesting, right? Why shouldn't our prisoners be able to unionize? Come on.
Regarding Amendment 1, you said that this was actually passed on a bipartisan basis. So that's making me wonder, what is the underlying problem that's trying to be solved here, and what are some of the pros and cons to that?
With the amendment itself, or, well, I would just say just because it's bipartisan doesn't mean, some people said that they weren't sure what they were voting for, and that they thought that they were being kind of blue collar workers. I don't think there's a problem. The problem that's trying to be worked on most often in Illinois is that the politicians are working with the unions and vice versa. They backstretch each other, take care of each other, and the problem they're trying to solve is to solidify it, cement it, so that if there's ever a turnaround, and, you know, if there's imagine we tried to have a Virginia revolt in Illinois, but that's already in the Constitution. Well, it'd be really hard to take back the union gains if they can cement them in the Constitution. So some might argue, the opponents might argue, that the problem they're trying to solve is how to cement the gains they've put together over taxpayers over the last 50 years. The proponents will just be saying, we just want to protect ourselves against bad guys who want to take away our powers. So I don't have a great answer for you, other than I think we all know the history of labor and Illinois politicians. It's deep and it's long and it's very predictable.
Hi, Ted. I just was wondering, with the abysmal numbers that you gave us on the kids reading and math and whatever reports, do you have an analysis of how that came about? Because in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, the scores around here were sky high in reading and math. Is it because of COVID, or is it because of the new curriculums, or is it everything?
Yeah, look, it's not because of COVID, because all the numbers we showed COVID numbers as well, but we showed the pre-COVID numbers. And the pre-COVID numbers, all those numbers we talked about for Rockford and Decatur, those were pre-COVID, so they're much worse now. That's a tougher assessment for me in terms of what happened, because I think it's everything. You've had wherever these phones are. These phones, I think the phones are a killer for kids in terms of learning. I think parents have become less and less engaged. I think we're allowing the system, we keep allowing the system to do things for our kids rather than us doing them. When we started the free lunches, and it sounds really mean, but we started doing all these things where kids could be dropped off at school earlier and later. Everybody started saying, okay, well, the school's got my kids, they got it, I don't have to worry. And I think there's way too much of that has happened. Then you've got the whole curriculum issue that's been going on for a few decades now, where slowly but surely we're removing classics and adding these new age, these books that I can't believe. I mean, we had a big fight in New Trier when they introduced a book called Two Boys Kissing. And this is for 10th grade. And a lot of people who brought up this problem of the two boys kissing, which is all about what you can imagine, two boys kissing. And it wasn't so much that it was about two boys kissing, it was the graphic sexual stuff that was in the book. But it's becoming a common thing across, and we all know this, it's becoming a common thing that they're putting more and more things that parents object to in the classroom. And so I think it's just a continuous degradation of standards, of values, of trying to get rid of grades in many places. It's really, really weird. That's why I argue we've got to get back to school. We have to get to school choice at some point, because that's our only real out. And once we have enough competition, we'll get there.
Okay. I just wanted to say, since the 1920s, the Communist Party has infiltrated the teachers' unions since then. So are we surprised at all about the numbers and the sexuality, about what's going on in our schools? We can sit there and try to combat what's going on, but we have to look at the overall agenda of what is happening, and it's not just in this school. But that's not what you talk about. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, most of you will remember, was it last year, the year before, the culturally responsive teaching and leading standards, and that was the whole teaching of more progressive policies, and the teachers were learning all this stuff, and this part of the curriculum now, the education of schools. So you're right, sir, and it's what's happening.
When I went to school, we had 31 or 32 kids in the classroom. Now they have less kids in the classroom. The argument then was they had too many kids and needed more teachers. Now they have fewer kids and don't need the teachers, but they'll never get rid of them because they're all union members, whether they want to be or not in some cases.
That's right.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you very much, Ted. It's a wonderful presentation and important work. Two quick items. Number one, that negotiating in secret, that is really a terrible problem. This morning in the King County Board, they approved 2 of 17 collective bargaining agreements, and not one of the board members asked how much is what was the rate of the increase. They passed it, no discussion. And so when we have people who are running for the county board, they really do need your help, because we need people who are going to ask those basic questions. And then finally, Ted, I'm so inspired by the work that you do and the organization under the category of what are we going to do about this? I heard several of the people gasping, in the audience, gasping at what you are talking about. They say, why is it that this is happening? It's because parents and citizens don't know We don't know about this stuff. We can't imagine that it would be this bad. So my intention, after all the constitutional duties are done in the treasurer's office, I intend to publicize the statistics for Kane County schools once a year, to come to you with that information so that you have it, so that all 532,000 constituents in Kane County have it. You might say, what in the world does that have to do with the treasury function, Chris? I'll tell you what, our money is not our treasure. Our children and our grandchildren are our treasure.
Thank you. To Chris's point, he was talking about like what we're talking about with what we can do for our treasure. Although the reading grades are horrible in Illinois, what kids can do is look at pictures and they can see things. And the approved curriculum that is happening right now in Illinois is horrific. I have one of the approved curriculums with me. I'm an advocate for policy in Springfield. And when I look at what this curriculum is doing for my 10-year-old granddaughter, it's horrific. And you're welcome to look at these books. I hope it horrifies you and puts you into action. But what you see in here, you cannot unsee. And what young people are seeing in this curriculum, they cannot unsee. And therefore, it's forcing conversations that children are not ready for. One of the questions I had for Ted right now, I'm sorry, is I've spoken to many parents in local districts that want to get involved, conservative parents, but they don't know how to get involved at a district level. They feel ill-equipped, they don't feel like they would know how to run a campaign for that. Is there an avenue out there for that training? Are we quote unquote grooming the next conservative person who's running for these offices?
Be careful that term.
Well, I just want to steal the term back. So what can we do to help with these people who want to run, just don't know how or feel like they're fighting against some massive issue?
That's a good question, and that's something we're trying to tackle at Wire Points, and trying to figure out how to, we've got all the data. We shouldn't make every group in Illinois try to get their own data. We have it, so we want to make sure it gets out there. We also want to get in things like that and report on it. But we're looking to see how we help. This is a problem we have in Illinois. We have to bring together all these parents who want to really get engaged in education. So I owe you an answer. I don't have it right now, but I'm hoping that Wire Points takes on a little bit of that role. We can't do a lot because we're a small group, but if we can do, then let's talk.
Talking
Yeah.
to three supers right now.
Fantastic.
And I'm trying to find a way in King County to like help local people run for board.
Okay, so let's talk after, and we're always looking for engaged people, and we can help engage people, and vice versa. So thank you.
Also, Three-Headed Eagle would also like to get involved. Yes, so we totally would like, we have election integrity as one of our arms. We certainly would like to add the education. And this book here, if you haven't seen it, you'll fall off your chair. It is unbelievable what's in the pictures that are in here. And here in Geneva, at a school board meeting, one of a citizens enlarged these pictures, and it says from 10 and up, and they turned off the cameras so that people couldn't see live stream at home, and yet they let your children have this. When you see this, you will not believe it. So
Where are they using that? In school or in the library?
it's in 3rd grade.
School history, school health education. It's one of
It's
the.
actually being taught, I mean, it's part of in their health education plan.
It's
Like,
one of
what
the
grade?
curriculums, 3rd grade, kindergarten. This is a 3rd grade book. Kindergarten to 12th grade.
SB 818. So I highly recommend you take a quick look at this. It's disgusting. And like I said, they turned off the cameras here in Geneva when they were enlarged. Absolutely.
I think it's important not to be disillusioned that because you don't have kids in school, you shouldn't run for school boards. Parents, that's right. We're
Exactly.
paying taxes, and this is lowering our tax
based on our homes and our values. When parents have kids in school, that's the hardest time for them to run. They need people like us to stand up. I'm an empty nester. I should be out there running, but I'm working in Springfield, so I need you guys to run.
Absolutely. We need to have people here, and they said back in St. Charles, so we need everyone to help us find those people. There are many of us in the room that are PCs, and we help work get the right people elected. It's very hard to find those right people. So if everyone in this room can help us find, certainly you can send an email to info@Three-Headed Eagle Alliance, and we'd be happy to help get the word out and work with them.
I just wanted to say that Moms for Liberty is doing a lot, and they're having a training on September 25th, or 24th, which is coming up, so it's out there.
And we can put that in our newsletter as well, the September 24th. I think it costs like $10. I'm not sure where it's at, but I've got the flyer in it. So I highly recommend that. And that would be for school board candidates. The Moms for Liberty, yeah, that's out of Florida. One more question, and then we have tonight our chairman for Kane County Republican Party who is nominated. We had a fantastic rally. So I'd like to give him a minute to speak. So we'll have one more question over here, and then we'll have Andrew speak. I saw someone over here.
You mentioned you talked to the superintendent in Tulsa, Illinois?
I tried to talk to them.
Oh, you did?
I wrote them a note and said, how do you do it? How do you have the best results, the second best results in the state, and only spend that much money? I think you should get, well, I don't know what they've done there, but they deserve either some credit or an investigation.
Yeah, I'd like to figure out what he did. I mean, that would be good information for everyone to know, just as an example of.
Yes, since he hasn't called us back, we're just going to write up a piece, expose it, I mean, in a positive way, and let's see if he responds.
I'm a retired guidance counselor, and I can tell you the answer to that the number one thing for kids' success is not money, it's parental involvement. So, what's the answer? Get parents involved, coming into classrooms, helping. It doesn't mean they have to be teaching them reading. They just need to be in the building, visible, knowing what's going on. That is it's not money. So quit listening to money, but it is parental involvement.
Okay, well, I would like to thank Ted
Thank you.
for coming. It was an amazing presentation for all of his time that he's given. And in preparing this information, please join me in saying thank you to Ted. What a great